Welcome to the Roundtable. We are really glad to be back with you. I'm Maura Carlin alongside Mike Witch. As you just heard, the 3 local high schools participated in the March 14th school walkout against gun violence. Tonight we're joined by student representatives from those schools. Before we begin, I do want to thank Mamaroneck High School students and Dave Golden from Rhinebeck for some of the videos that you saw and may see in this segment. So from Mamaroneck High School, we have Sophia, Psaila, Eddie Cam and Gabrielle Santo, and from Rhinebeck High School, Dasha Boswell. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Let's start with, do you feel safe at school?
Yeah, that's a great question. Personally, for me, no. And I think that's one of the reasons why all these students nationwide protested, because we realized that that tragedy that happened at Parkland could have been us, and that guns are way too easy to access, and that it's dangerous for everybody, not just students.
What about you, Eddie?
Well, I agree with Sophia. I feel like, I should feel safe at school. And, right now I don't. And I think there's things we can do to, feel safer at school. And I don't understand why we're not doing those things. And, yeah.
And we'll come back and talk about what those things are. Gabrielle?
I agree with both Sophia and Eddie. I mean, I don't feel safe at school. You know, the tragedy at Parkland could have happened anywhere. It could have happened.
Is this on your mind as you're in classes?
Yeah.
Yes.
What about you, Dasha?
Well, personally, I don't feel safe at school because I feel more hyper aware of everything that's going on, considering the mass shootings that keep happening in schools. But because I come from such a small school, I feel like a lot of students don't realize that they're not as safe as they think they are in their small community.
So none of you really think, oh, that could never happen here?
I mean,
I
used to think that way, truthfully, but after Sandy Hook, I would say that's really changed in middle school, but the Parkland incident was
How old
really
were you all when Sandy Hook happened, approximately?
Sandy Hook happened in 2012, right?
I was 12.
So I was 12.
So you were middle school age-ish. So were you affected by that?
Yeah, it made me feel unsafe. You know, it happened so close to home, and you never thought that, no one ever thought that a mass shooter would come in and shoot little kids that were 5, 6, and 7 years old.
Did you address that at the time, or is it just now after Parkland where you've said basically enough is enough, something must be done?
Now after Parkland, when you're 12, you don't really understand, what goes through someone's mind that causes them to do such a thing,
Yeah, I mean, for me, a big inspiration were the Parkland students. That since Sandy Hook, I've always been like, we need to do something, but because these students have really taken action and started this movement, it's inspired me and all students nationwide.
Yeah. And I feel like when Sandy Hook happened, these kids were in elementary school. Like, they can't start a movement. They're like young kids. And, and that was the unfortunate thing about Sandy Hook was that. But now, with Parkland, these kids are high schoolers. We're going to vote very soon. Some of us are going to vote this year, and some of us are going to vote in 2 years. And I feel like now the movement's begun because we know that, and we're willing to demand change.
Well, as our viewers and you may have noticed, we've been putting out some polls leading up to this discussion out on social media. And I want to use some of them to discuss, and I have to say, they are quite unscientific. Okay, they are small samplings of people who have self-selected to follow the local live and to answer the poll. So get that out of the way, unscientific. But on the poll, should there be an armed presence in school? About 1/3 said yes, and 2/3 said no. How do you feel? Should there be an armed presence in school?
I don't think that there should be. Personally, I would feel very unsafe if there were police officers surrounding the school or people with weaponry. School should be safe. It should be a safe environment. We shouldn't feel like we're in a prison or some sort of.
Do you guys agree? Yeah. Dasha, I'll go to you to get you in here.
Yeah, I feel like the whole reason anyone has proposed to put armed personnel in schools because they're afraid of something happening. But by doing that, you're fighting fear with fear. You're adding fear into the classrooms, adding to the idea that there is a likelihood of something like that happening in the schools.
Interesting. I'm sorry.
Sorry. And in addition, I think it just creates a bigger chance of any mistakes happening, especially if you have untrained people. It's just going to be more people accidentally being shot from like a sudden movement or misjudgment. Well,
interestingly, in our very unscientific poll, to the question whether teachers and staff members should be armed, it was 100% no.
Yeah.
When the question was asked whether police or armed security guards should have a presence in schools, what we got was literally 50-50. So, but you're saying that you are not in favor about that. What about you? All right, go ahead, Eddie.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think there's other steps we could take at school before doing something like that.
Such as?
Such as, for example, maybe, we have student IDs at Mamaroneck High School. I don't know about Ryeneck, but the teachers have faculty cards that they use to swipe in to get into the certain doors in the school. While us students only have to go in through 2 entrances, and we can't go into the other ones. If those student IDs we had were able to, open the door, then, we could go in through different entrances, and it wouldn't feel such a pain, and also we would be able to feel safer, in my opinion.
So it's about keeping out people who shouldn't be there.
Keeping out people who shouldn't be there, and I feel like if we have a way to get in that other people don't, that's just one way to feel safer. There's other things we could do too, but that's just an idea before going with something like arming teachers or doing something.
How do you feel about arming, Gabrielle?
Arming teachers is a little extreme, in my opinion, honestly, because guns and more guns, that doesn't solve anything.
What about having security guards or police presence, even if it's outside the school?
I mean, like Eddie said, I think we have more steps to take before we take that particular step. But I think that, that's something we can definitely consider. I mean, if the time comes and if it's so needed, our student safety is our first priority. So whatever steps need to be taken, we will take.
In our poll, we also asked a couple of questions about the Second Amendment. And by more than 2 to 1, or actually by 71% said that they believe that the Second Amendment is outdated. Is that something you guys discuss?
I think it's something we should discuss. That's definitely, I've not heard a lot about that. I think it's completely outdated. I mean, at the time they were talking about muskets. There's no insight to the technology we have now.
I mean, the entire purpose of the Second Amendment was to protect you from your own government, actually. And while I don't think it's outdated, I don't think it guarantees the rights for everyone to own a gun or certain types of weaponry.
We are going to take a break on this segment now, and we'll be back in a moment with more of our discussion. Welcome back. We're now going to talk about the walkout to prevent gun violence at schools. We're talking a little bit about our polls. But I've been told that we have a Facebook question. What do you tell people that think you guys are too young to know about guns and gun control?
I will totally disagree with that because, as you could see, like the national conversation didn't come from any adults. It came from us. It came from the kids in Parkland, and it came from kids around the nation who are now discussing this and are pushing what they feel is appropriate. I mean, we're going to vote. I keep on saying this. I said it yesterday in my speech, but I think it's being forgotten that we're going to vote soon. And so our voices deserve to be heard. We shouldn't be shut down because we're 2 years younger than the average adult or more.
So let's hear about the events that happened at your schools. And let's start with you, Dasha. What was the event at Ryeneck High School?
Well, initially there were a group of students that wanted to organize a walkout, the national walkout to end gun violence, like the Parkland students called for. What ended up happening is that, understandably, the school holds a liability to the students and the potential of something happening if all the students walk outside. They wanted to do something about that, make something organized. However, by the school getting involved and organizing something, it detracted from the main point of the entire walkout, which is to address gun violence, which they didn't do. They changed the entire walkout to a walk of remembrance and empowerment. So therefore, the issue was not addressed, and we were told this isn't about gun violence and solely remembrance. But the Parkland students said they don't need our thoughts and prayers. They need action, and so we're doing the complete opposite of what they wanted us to do.
So you weren't happy with your event. At Mamaroneck High School, a lot of it was remembrance. How did that differ from what was just described?
We called for change. You know, we called for change when it came to gun violence and gun control, and we just wanted, you know, it to be about the victims. You know, we wanted it to not be about politics. You know, guns are guns, and victims are victims, and they're people. They're actual living human beings, you know? That's the difference between, you know, where they were going and where we were going with our event.
Yeah.
Was everyone in your school, either of your school, any of your schools, against this or thought this was a dumb idea?
Well, I know that there were kids who disagreed with this, and I wanted to talk to those kids. Those were the kids who I wanted to talk to the most, because the people who, you know, I was part of helping with this walkout that we did, and you know, we all kind of were on the same page, maybe a little bit differences, but I wanted to talk to the people who really disagreed on the movement. I wanted to know why, and I wanted to know what they thought. And so those people who said that they weren't going to go to the walkout, you know, I saw those people. I saw those people because they wanted to see what was going to happen.
Well,
And
there are a lot of people who might not want to walk out, who might not be necessarily think it's a dumb idea. There are lots of reasons someone might not walk out.
Yes.
Do you think, we have a question that came in about wondering if our culture promotes the kind of gun violence that we saw at Parkland and other schools. Sasha?
I think our culture absolutely supports any gun culture. Many of our legislators take money from the NRA, and as we've seen when a Parkland student asked Marco Rubio, he refused to not accept. It just shows how legislators value the money in their bank accounts more than they value the safety of their constituents. And it's the same for everything else that's going on and where our government chooses to put in money, as opposed to maybe if they really worry about mental illness of those who decide to go and do such horrible things at schools. Maybe instead of taking money out of the education department and putting it into some other department in the government, where instead the money could be going to our education department and going to schools where we can provide counselors and school psychiatrists that many schools don't get, or at least solid psychiatrists and counselors at school to support these people.
So do you think that adults have let you down in this area?
I don't think they let us down. I just feel like they're complacent. We grew up, my generation, our generation, we grew up with mass shootings more than your generation, our parents. We grew up with Pulse and Las Vegas and all these horrible things happening throughout our lives, and it just sticks through our memories always. And so it's affected us and made us more opinionated, and that goes into if, you know, students where people question the validity of our arguments and if, because we're so young, should be arguing for these things in government. We should. We grew up with this. We know what's going on. We feel it in the schools. We're hyper aware of if someone in public places, you know, I personally feel like when I walk out, is there a danger? It's in movie theaters, it's in schools. Churches and schools should be the safest places you should go, and it's happened both places.
I think on that note, we're going to wrap up this segment, and we'll be back in a moment. Okay, welcome back. So you've had your march. You organized a rally at Harbor Island. What's next, and what do you hope to accomplish? We'll start with you, Gabrielle.
We hope to accomplish just what we set out to do, for this to never happen again. That's what we want, you know, no matter which way we get it, whether that's going, you know, through gun control or helping mentally ill people, whatever way we go about doing this, we need to make sure that this never happens again and that no other student says, me next.
Eddie?
And
I'm sorry. I'll let you two decide.
Okay, I was just going to say that, you know, the idea, I feel, because I've been following this issue specifically since Sandy Hook, I feel, and the idea was, from the opposition, was, you know, let them grieve. Let's not talk about this right now. They're in a grieving state, the kids at the high school or the elementary school, and that stopped. I feel that stopped in Parkland because the kids said no. That we want to grieve by changing. We don't want that ever to happen again. And I feel like that's what we're going to do, you know, still. There's a march in New York City and in Washington, the March for Our Lives, that's going to be on the 24th. And I mean, it's going to be big. I don't know how big it's going to be, but there are a lot of people who are going to support that march, and rightfully so.
And you have allies, obviously.
Yeah.
Because I think yesterday's walkout there was an organization that helped support that, right? Or helped organize that?
Right. Well,
There were two. There was the Parkland students, but I don't know if you're getting to the question that I had in mind.
What was your question?
But a question that had been emailed in earlier is that some of this walkout was facilitated by the organizers of the Women's March, which those organizers have come under heavy scrutiny and criticism for anti-Semitism, among other things. Sure. To your knowledge, what was their role, and how does that affect how you feel about it?
I mean, their role for me in organizing the walkout wasn't that extreme. And from my experience with organizing it, it was really student-led, especially at our school.
Individual schools, you mean?
Or nationwide, students across. So I mean, in my opinion, it's crucial that students are in the core center of this movement, because we are the ones that created it. We are the ones that are also being affected by it. And
yeah, I will say this. You know, with the movement that's happening right now, it looks pretty bad if you're the opposition and you're going against a kid. If you're attacking a kid, if you're attacking a teenager, no matter what you spin it's going to look bad.
Do you have any concerns about taking guns away from responsible owners who want to go hunting, or, you know, who do it for sport? It is a sport.
Yeah.
Agreed, it is a sport, but it should be done responsibly, you know, with a person who is above the age of 18, or someone who has, you know, the emotional stability. Also, you know, for us teens, our brains aren't fully developed until we're 25, you know, so we have emotional instability, we're still growing, we're still changing, you know, so we should at least be stable enough to make those decisions.
So are you saying there should be, in fact, an age limit, and that there should be some kind of mental health screening?
Yeah, there's an age limit to smoke, there's an age limit to drink. Why shouldn't there be an age limit to buy guns?
I can't drive a rental car until I'm 26 in some states or some companies, but I can buy an AR-15. That to me,
that doesn't make sense.
That to me does not.
Do you put this in the bucket of, well, I can't drink until I'm 21?
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe that should be lowered?
No.
No. Okay. We have a question from a viewer. Do you think there should be a ban on the sale of semi-automatic guns or accessories?
Yes.
Yes, I mean, the accessories to semi-automatic guns can make those guns fully automatic, which are banned. So it's just a loophole.
I think it's one thing people don't realize actually in their state, for those watching in Mamaroneck, Larchmont, is we have laws in place, and actually the AR-15 is not banned in New York, although there is a assault weapons ban. It does not ban specifically AR-15s, it's bans by its physical appearance.
But I think it also bans ammunition that can shoot more than 10 rounds.
Yeah, you can't have more than 10 rounds. But that's another thing that we need is we need common sense gun control. We need to regulate bump stocks. We need to make low capacity magazines and high capacity magazines. Just assault weapons are called assault weapons for a reason. They don't belong in anyone's home. How I see it is that if you're a gun owner and you want your gun, that's not an assault weapon. You have the right to it if you're responsible. And if you have nothing to hide from background checks and you have a stable mental health, then you shouldn't be worried about it.
I will just say this. I believe in this movement, but you know, there are people who own guns, and they're very responsible. And I've heard from people when talking to them, they feel under attack. They do. And I understand why. Because, you know, we got to be careful about what we say. We need to take steps in order to, you know, be safer in schools. But we also don't want to take away everyone's guns. That's something that people saying, you know, ban all the guns. I don't know how everyone else feels, but personally,
do you think that in either the school walkout or the rally at the harbor, there were any gun owners or gun enthusiasts participating?
I'm not quite sure. We come from a very liberal bubble, and I don't know anyone that personally owns a gun. But
Are you sure?
I've not talked about it. I'm not.
There you go. There you go. We do have a question on the prompter. Mike, can you get that for us?
Will you take a stand via your vote in the next election?
Yes, 100%.
And is this the issue that's going to determine your vote, or is it something else? Could it be something else?
I think it's a lot of different issues that come together. You know, for me personally, I, you know, prefer to just have a span of issues, and whichever candidate best fits, you know, my views on those particular issues, then, you know, I will definitely support them. But this is definitely one of the larger issues that I really will take into consideration during the next election.
What about you,
We
Dasha?
Definitely. Well, unfortunately, I turned 18 3 days after the election. So that's a bummer. But
There'll always be another election.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things I'll consider as a variety of issues, but more so a person that cares more about their constituents and who they're going to be representing, because that's something that we lack in the government, I feel, is that we have corporations like the NRA running these lawmakers and what decisions they make. And that's why we see inaction, and that's why 15-year-olds, elementary schoolers, taking action and standing up for what's right, because our lawmakers can't.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sophia. Did you want to say something?
No, I would completely agree with everything she said.
I was going to ask you, do you feel supported by the local candidates? For instance, there's a election coming up in April for the seat that George Latimer occupied in the New York State Senate. Have those candidates reached out to you to explain their position when you vote? Not yet.
First off, I'm 16, so I'm not going to be able to vote until 20.
Are any of you old enough to vote?
Yes, I'm 18, and I'm registered to vote, so I will be voting.
And you can also apply pressure at home.
Yeah.
And with other friends who are of voting age.
Can I just say, one of the things that when I joined this movement, I just want to say really quickly, that I was really inspired by is that, you know, the NRA was going after these kids in Parkland, and they were going after specific kids in Parkland. And the thing that really got to me was that these kids then thought, well, if the NRA is putting all this money in politicians' pockets and influencing what they do, why don't we go after companies that have partnerships with the NRA, which is such a smart strategy. And that's when I went, okay, this is the movement that we're going to be able to change something, because that's such a smart thing. Like I would have never thought of that. And they said, yeah, and we saw it. And the companies have pulled out a lot of, and you know, Hertz, other companies have pulled out. And it's so impressive.
We received another email. People want to talk to you about this. What would you tell a politician that receives money from the NRA?
That you're not with us.
Yep.
That you're not with the people of the United States, and that you are putting us in danger. I don't necessarily think that money should be taken, completely removed from politics. It's inevitable, and other companies give money to politicians like Planned Parenthood, but the amount that they give, that there needs to be some sort of limit, because they have too much influence on the politicians.
I want them to look at the videos from the Parkland shooting and then look me in the eye and then look at those dead kids that are on the floor and say, can you see me there? Do you want me to be there? Then you need to make a change.
We are out of time. I want to thank you all for coming. We've got Dasha Boswell, Gabrielle Santo, Eddie Cam, and Sophia Psaila. I'm going to get that right. And you all stay with us. We'll be back in a moment with more community stories.